we should check in on the Los Angeles Clippers. They've been pretty good. They are 20-6 in their last 26 games. As bad as things looked, Mo, to start after the James Harden trade, they have been excellent the last few weeks. This is a team that looks like they are going to be pushing for a title in May and June.
I mean, would that caveat that we always have to say with them, if they're healthy, like this is the one thing with the Clippers, like you really want to believe in them. You really do. You want to say all the things, but it's like, man, but every time they seem close, something bad happens and whatnot and all that. But you have to give them credit because I killed them, Dave, on this podcast, basically anywhere I went on the Harden trade. I thought it was a terrible idea. I thought it was dumb. I was killing them before they made the trade, killed them afterwards. And yeah, I got egg on my face, man. Like, this has been phenomenal for them. Like, James has been great. He's fit the role perfectly for them. You know, he's kind of gotten the offense moving and flowing. Kawhi is playing at like Kawhi levels, and really been phenomenal. Paul George has been awesome. They've done a good job in terms of figuring out the right rotations. Like Ty Lue you have to give him a ton of credit here in terms of figuring this whole thing out and putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and hey, Russ, you got to go to the bench, and Russ in limited minutes is very effective for this team. And then the most important thing too, at the end of all of this, is Harden and Zubac and Theis have figured out the pick and roll together, and they found that chemistry together, and that's been huge for them. Like, honestly, you look at this Clipper team and it's just, really kind of impressive considering what it looked like the first 5 or 6 games with Harden. We were all like, whoa, boy.
Seth, for the season, they're 6th in net rating. They're just out of the top 10 in defense, but they're in the top 10 in offense. We talk about all the time about the importance of being top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense, and how that separates you. I mean, Oklahoma City Thunder, the Boston Celtics, they're in that sort of tier. The Clippers, I think they've got a ways to go defensively. They can be way better than they have been, even. But their offense is they just got so many guys who can do stuff. And it's sort of this thing that we hit on all the time, Seth, where is it bad to have a bunch of guys that can score or a bunch of guys that can drive and kick and drive and pass? They can run out lineups with 4 guys able to handle, shoot, and pass. This team is playoff built.
And the too much ball handling, too much shot creation isn't really a thing. It's sort of are you getting good value for assets to assemble that at the expense of other things? And the Clippers are, in a fairly unique situation in terms of we don't care. We're only constrained by cap mechanics, not anything else. And then I think that we've seen I thought some of the best basketball James Harden played in his career was his first kind of couple weeks in Brooklyn, and he's approaching in a similar way in LA, where he is really willing to be more of I don't want to say a traditional point guard, but more of a distributor, more of a lay back and see and let Kawhi, and Kawhi's cooked this year. And of course, as you mentioned, the other part is their health. It's I was just looking it up through yesterday's games. Paul George is 30th and Kawhi is 49th in possessions played this year. And I think that's a big key to it. This is probably the healthiest Kawhi has been since, and maybe even before he won the title with the Raptors.
This is probably that season before he left San Antonio. I think that he looks as good physically as he has since then. What he's able to do, his rebounding is insane.
But I also don't want to sleep on this is a whole team. Like, this team is actually the deepest team in the NBA when you look at it. Norman Powell comes in off the bench and has been unbelievable. Like, to me, he's not getting talked up enough for a potential 6th man of the year type stuff that he's been doing. You have, obviously we touched on Russ coming off the bench. Terrence Mann has come in and filled a role for them. Like, I think they have a lot, like, they're so deep. They've just told PJ Tucker, you're not playing. And he was terrible for them, but they full on have just said, like, we don't really need you to play. And I think, now even with Mason Plumlee back, they have 3 bigs, and picking up Tice was huge for them at the time. And I think Indiana kind of made a mistake. I think if they held on to Tice, they probably could have spun him off for at least a couple second round picks in a trade or something like that to a team that needed bigs. But for the most part, though, you look at this team, like, who's deeper than them? Honestly, like, when you just look at it up and down the roster, like, the Celtics are great top 6, but like 7, 8, 9, okay. I think the Clippers are deeper when you go into that 7, 8, 9 range with them, and I think they have a lot of options there. And those guys come in and they don't take much off the plate when they come in.
I think we need to talk as much as about that depth. I think we need to talk about Zubac and Terrence Mann also. I think that before the season, even before the Harden trade, like, I think one of the things we were looking for is, do they find a way to finesse Mann in instead of Westbrook? And they've there's some pains to get there, but they did that. And then Zubac is having for a guy who's always been seen as sort of out there, and we worry about him in the playoffs. He is having a great season on both ends of the floor. He's currently 5th in my rim protection metric. Opponents are shooting about 48.5% against him at the rim, which is one of the top marks in the league. So I mean, they're just not just the stars and the depth, but those middle guys also are contributing mightily.
Well, and you know what, Zubac, this might be the best pick and roll partner he's ever had in James Harden. And if you look at his numbers, I mean, he's shooting. This is his best field goal percentage season. He's averaging the most field goal attempts of his career. Obviously, most amount of points. I think Zubac getting unlocked has made everyone else's life easier. Just having a capable pick and roll point guard, and to your point, Seth, going more traditional point guard, setting people up. And then Harden's doing the thing that he kind of did in Brooklyn, where he's ready to close, but he's not the closer for them, right? Like, Kawhi is their closer, but James Harden is ready to close. And I think that when you've got that sort of high level offense, I mean, who's the opposing defense best defender going to guard? Is it going to be Kawhi?
No,
when we get playoff time, it has to be Kawhi, right?
It has to be Kawhi. Like, there's just, you have to kind of lock down Kawhi. But then that means Harden and Paul George get to go after guys 2 and 3. And the other thing that's really interesting with this is, and to go back to James Harden play, he has the lowest usage of those guys. He's at 20% usage. Like, I mean, let go back 2 years ago. Would James Harden, if I told you James Harden would have a 20% usage at some point in the next few years, you guys would have laughed at me or thought I was crazy. I mean, this is where we're at right now in the 31 games. Kawhi is higher and Paul George is higher. I mean, he's found a good flow and mix with everything there. And I think a lot of this, again, we got to give credit to Ty Lue and the coaching staff, kind of putting together and figuring out the pieces, not panicking right away when this thing didn't look good, pretty quick, and it looked terrible. And then Ty has done a great job.
And this is the first time. Again, I hate to keep dropping this caveat if they stay healthy, but this is the first time that this group, the Paul George, Kawhi, Ty Lue group, will go into the playoffs having some sort of chemistry and continuity. They normally get into the playoffs and they play like strangers. Like, they don't know each other. They don't know the plays. And now all of a sudden we're going to have, Kawhi Leonard looks like a top 10 guy. I think he could be the best player in any playoff series if he's going to stay this healthy. Paul George, we've seen him be the best player in playoff series before. We've seen him be the best player on the court with other MVP caliber players before. We obviously know James Harden and his story. They are not just the deepest team in the league. They might have the higher ceiling of any team outside of Nuggets and maybe Celtics.
And they have one other thing that I think is playoff useful. And that's, you talked about putting the best defender on Kawhi. He's for a largely perimeter guy. He is somewhat unique in, you don't just need a guy who can stay in front of him laterally. You need a guy who can just not get just knock. I mean, he might be the strongest pound for pound guy in the NBA, just his ability to move people out of the way. And so, can you guard him with a Mikal Bridges, like that traditional sort of lanky wing stopper? I mean, it's a guy he's just going to put in the basket, and he's patient enough to
No,
do
you
that.
need a clone. You need a clone Kawhi.
Yeah.
And put him on the other team. Like that's the type of dude that can guard Kawhi. Is that kind of strong?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a Marcus Smart type guy who's strong in that sense, or won't get pushed around. But that's a great point, Seth. And like, yeah, the Mikal Bridges in the world. I'm trying to think more in the Western Conference because we all know the Nets aren't going to make it to the far enough to play them in the playoffs. But like those types of skinny, lanky dudes can't guard him. It's going to be really tough. Who would be a fun matchup for him though? Would be Jalen Williams in Oklahoma City. J-Dub is wing Jalen, strong, stocky dude like that. That's a fun matchup. Oklahoma City and the LA Clippers. Like I think that could be a really fun series that I hope we get maybe in the playoffs if everybody's healthy. But I think there are some stuff, but it's hard. It's hard to find a dude that can hold up against him.
Yeah,
I mean that's why he's damn near MVP level right now. Like it's something you got to talk about. Like when you look at the way Kawhi's playing, there needs to be more hype for him. If he stays healthy all year, there's Clippers continue to rise in the standings.
Yeah, defensively, again, they're able to switch. James Harden, everybody's, it's a big thing with James Harden. Is he going to defend? Is he going to buy in? I actually think they've used him pretty well. I mean, he comes in, he's the dig guy a lot on doubles. He uses his hands really well. They don't mind him guarding a big here and there. Mo, like, are they doing anything unique, or is this just every single guy there doing a good job of guarding their guy?
I think I think it's a little bit of both. I think the most important thing is like, look, he's got two perimeter defenders that he plays with, and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So he's, you can hide him more easily on guys. And we've always known, like, hey, man, put him on a big. Like, hide him on a big dude for the most part, and you'd be fine. And he'll do a good job in terms of what you're saying, digging, helping, and doing those types of things and whatnot. Like, it ain't always going to be perfect. There are going to be games where it's like, Harden doesn't look interested at all on defense, but they have enough behind him defensively that it really won't be so catastrophic as it was on other teams and other situations that he was on. They have so much defensive versatility across the board. I mean, Seth talking about Zubac's rim protection. We know the stories with Kawhi. We know Paul George is a damn good defender. Like right there, that's three guys in the starting lineup that all can cover for James. And I think they're in a good position.
Also.
And Terrence Mann, yeah.
And man, I mean, man. So they got, four guys that they fully are covered with, in that sense. You can survive with one bad defender. And to be honest, when you have four guys defending like that, it tends to bleed into you trying a little harder. And it's shown. And he's done a good job. Like, give him credit. He's done a great job fitting in with this team. And the vibes are immaculate on this team. Who'd have thought the Clippers would be a good vibes team?
I mean, you mentioned the lower usage, Dave, and I know, Mo, you always hate it when we semi give a guy a pass for mediocre defensive effort because of their offensive load. But I mean, he's got, he between playmaking and scoring, he's using 15-20% fewer possessions this year. There's got to be more energy left for just being engaged on defense, so he can be merely a bad defender, not an apocalyptic defender, which is sort of, for a lot of these guys, is sort of, you get to bad, and then maybe for Devin Booker you go past that and become good, but like, let's ask for achievable things for Harden, and just be attentive and in scheme and and engaged, and like you say, Mo, let the other guys kind of take the heavier lifts on defense, and we'll be fine.
I mean, look, for Harden though, it's very much been about attention and activity and just caring even a little bit, right? So, good to see him doing that.